Marcus Thompson had been working as a night janitor at Goldman Financial for 3 months, deliberately keeping his head down and his real identity hidden. But when his boss Richard Sterling caught him reading classified SEC documents in perfect silence, Sterling's first words were harsh. "Hey, you're not paid to be smart, you're paid to clean." What Sterling didn't know was that the man he was about to fire was the FBI director conducting the most important undercover operation of his career. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down the marble corridors of Goldman Financial's 42nd floor. It was just past midnight, and the building was empty except for the security guards stationed at the lobby and the occasional workaholic burning the midnight oil. Marcus had perfected the art of invisibility over these 3 months, head down, movements efficient, never making eye contact with the few people he encountered during his night shifts. But invisibility was exactly what he needed. As the director of the FBI, Marcus Thompson had spent the last 20 years climbing the ranks of federal law enforcement, earning respect through intelligence, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Tonight, however, he was just another black man in a Navy janitor's uniform, emptying trash bins and mopping floors in one of Manhattan's most prestigious financial firms. The operation, codenamed Clean Sweep, had been 18 months in the planning. Goldman Financial was suspected of being at the center of a massive money laundering scheme that stretched across 3 continents and involved some of the most powerful people in American finance. Traditional surveillance had failed. Wiretaps had been circumvented. The only way to get concrete evidence was from the inside, and Marcus had volunteered to go deep undercover. He reached Richard Sterling's corner office and used his key card to enter. Sterling was Goldman's chief financial officer, a man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure. His office was a monument to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, leather furniture that cost more than most people's annual salary, and walls lined with awards and photographs of Sterling shaking hands with senators, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries. Marcus began his routine, emptying the wastebasket and wiping down surfaces, but his real attention was on Sterling's computer, which the man had carelessly left unlocked. Marcus had been waiting for this opportunity for weeks. He pulled out a small USB device, standard FBI tech that could clone hard drives in minutes, and was about to insert it when something on the monitor caught his eye. The screen displayed an email chain that made Marcus's blood run cold. The subject line read, "Project Phoenix, Final Transfer Authorization." As he read further, he realized he was looking at the smoking gun his team had been searching for. The emails detailed a complex scheme to move $2.3 billion in illegal funds through a network of shell companies, with the money ultimately destined for accounts controlled by a known international arms dealer. But there was more. The email chain included names, senators, federal judges, high-ranking military officials, people who were supposed to be guardians of American security, but were instead selling out their country for financial gain. Marcus felt his jaw tighten as he read the list. Some of these people he had worked with personally, had trusted, had considered friends. He began photographing the screen with a hidden camera in his janitor's uniform, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was uncovering. This wasn't just about money laundering anymore. This was treason on a scale that could threaten national security. That's when he heard the elevator ding. Marcus quickly pocketed his camera and grabbed his cleaning supplies, but it was too late to move away from the computer. The office door swung open, and Richard Sterling walked in, his expensive suit wrinkled from what had clearly been a long day. He stopped dead when he saw Marcus standing near his desk, the computer screen still glowing behind him. "What the hell are you doing?" Sterling's voice was sharp, suspicious. Marcus straightened up, assuming the slightly hunched posture he had perfected for his undercover persona. "Just cleaning, sir. I'll be out of your way in just a minute." Sterling's eyes narrowed as he walked around to his side of the desk. His gaze fell on the computer screen, still displaying the incriminating email chain. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Sterling's expression shifted from suspicion to something much more dangerous. "You can read," Sterling said, his voice quiet and cold. Marcus kept his expression neutral, channeling every bit of training he'd received about maintaining cover under pressure. "Sir, Don't play dumb with me. Sterling moved closer, his presence intimidating. You were reading my email. I can see it in your eyes. You understand what you're looking at. This was the moment every undercover agent feared, the moment when your cover was blown and you had to make split-second decisions that could determine whether you lived or died. Marcus knew he had several options. He could maintain his cover and risk Sterling destroying the evidence. He could reveal his identity and risk blowing the entire operation, or he could try to neutralize Sterling and risk creating an even bigger problem. But Sterling made the choice for him. Hey! Sterling's voice rose, filled with arrogance and disdain. You're not paid to be smart, you're paid to clean. Maybe I've been too lenient with you people. Maybe you need to be reminded of your place. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. You people. In those two words was centuries of racism, discrimination, and the assumption that a black man in a janitor's uniform couldn't possibly be intelligent enough to understand complex financial documents. Sterling wasn't just insulting Marcus, he was insulting every black person who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of the color of their skin. Marcus felt something shift inside him, not anger, but a cold, calculated resolve. He had spent 3 months being invisible, being treated as less than human, being ignored and dismissed, and in this moment, he realized that his race had been both his greatest challenge and his most powerful asset in this operation. People like Sterling never saw him coming because they never saw him at all. You're right, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a subtle change that Sterling was too arrogant to notice. I'm not paid to be smart. Sterling seemed to relax slightly, interpreting Marcus's words as submission. That's right. And since you seem to have trouble understanding boundaries, I think it's time we had a conversation with HR about your employment here. He reached for his phone, probably planning to call security, but Marcus spoke again. But the thing is, Sterling, Marcus said, his posture slowly straightening, his voice gaining authority, I'm not paid by you at all. Sterling's hand froze halfway to his phone. There was something in Marcus's tone that made him look up, really look. For the first, the man standing in front of him was no longer the hunched, deferential janitor he thought he knew. This man stood tall, confident, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. What did you just say? Sterling's voice was uncertain now. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open, revealing a gold badge and identification card. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The color drained from Sterling's face as he stared at the badge. His mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish gasping for air. The arrogant, commanding presence he had projected moments before crumbled as the reality of the situation hit him. That's not possible, Sterling stammered. You're a janitor. You've been here for months. I've seen you. You clean toilets. I've been conducting an undercover investigation into your company's involvement in international money laundering, Marcus continued, his voice now carrying the full authority of his position. And thanks to your carelessness in leaving your computer unlocked, and your need to humiliate what you thought was a simple janitor, I now have everything I need to bring down your entire operation. Sterling's legs seemed to give out, and he sank into his leather chair. You can't. You have no right. I have every right, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. With a few quick taps, he activated an app that sent a signal to the FBI teams positioned around the building. And in about 60 seconds, this building is going to be swarming with federal agents who have been waiting for my signal. As if on cue, the elevator dinged, and the sound of multiple footsteps echoed through the hallway. Sterling's head whipped toward the door, his face now completely white. Mr. Sterling, Marcus said, straightening his janitor's uniform with a gesture that somehow made it seem like the most powerful outfit in the room. You're under arrest. The office door burst open, and 6 FBI agents in tactical gear entered, their weapons drawn but pointed downward. Agent Sarah Chen, Marcus's second-in-command, stepped forward. Director Thompson, she said with a slight smile, we have the building secured. Teams are in position on all floors, and we've isolated their computer systems to prevent any data destruction. Sterling looked back and forth between Marcus and the agents, his brain still struggling to process what was happening.
This can't be real. You're a janitor. You're... But Marcus finished for him. Yes, I am. And you know what that taught me, Mr. Sterling?
It taught me that people like you never see people like me coming. You were so busy looking down on me that you never thought to look at me. He walked around Sterling's desk and sat in the man's chair, a symbolic reversal of power that wasn't lost on anyone in the room. For 3 months I watched you and your colleagues treat me like I was invisible. Do you know how many times you walked past me without acknowledgement? How many conversations you had in front of me because you assumed I was too stupid to understand them? Sterling said nothing, his arrogance finally completely deflated. But here's what you didn't know, Marcus continued. I have a PhD in criminal justice from Harvard. I speak 4 languages fluently. I've been with the FBI for 20 years, and I've brought down some of the most dangerous criminals in the world. And for the last 3 months, while you thought I was just cleaning your toilets, I was systematically documenting every aspect of your criminal enterprise. Agent Chen stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the desk in front of Sterling. We have evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy charges that will put you away for the rest of your life. We have bank records, email communications, recorded phone conversations, and testimony from 3 of your co-conspirators who have already agreed to cooperate. Sterling opened the folder with shaking hands. Page after page of documentation, financial records, photographs, transcribed conversations, evidence of crimes he thought he had hidden so carefully. How? He whispered. The janitor's cart, Marcus said with a slight smile. Amazing what people will say in front of someone they don't consider a threat. Every conversation you had in the hallway, every phone call you took while I was cleaning your office, every document you carelessly left on your desk, I saw it all, heard it all, documented it all. But the story was far from over. In fact, the revelation of Marcus's true identity was just the beginning of a chain of events that would shake the financial world to its core. Agent Chen activated a secure communication device. Control, this is Team Lee. We have the primary target in custody. Initiate Phase 2. Sterling looked up sharply. Phase 2? What's Phase 2? Marcus stood up from the chair and straightened his tie. Phase 2 is where we arrest the other 47 people involved in your conspiracy, including 2 sitting senators, a federal judge, and the CEO of the 3rd largest bank in America. As Marcus spoke, Sterling's phone began buzzing with incoming calls and text messages. Word was spreading fast through their network. Something was wrong, very wrong. You see, Mr. Sterling, Marcus continued, your organization made a critical error. You assumed that because I was black and wearing a janitor's uniform, I couldn't possibly be a threat to you. That assumption blinded you to the fact that I was documenting everything, building the largest financial crime case in FBI history. The office door opened again, and Marcus's assistant, Director of Communications Jessica Walsh, entered with a tablet. Director Thompson, the media briefing is ready. We're prepared to announce the arrests simultaneously in New York, Washington, D.C., and Miami. Sterling's eyes widened as he realized the scope of what was happening. The media. You're going public with this? Oh yes, Marcus said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. You see, this case isn't just about financial crimes, it's about the systematic corruption of American institutions by people who thought they were untouchable. People who thought they could hide behind their wealth and privilege and never face consequences for their actions. He paused, looking directly at Sterling. People who thought that a black man in a janitor's uniform could never be smart enough to bring them down. Agent Chen handcuffed Sterling as Marcus continued speaking. For 3 months, I endured your condescension, your casual racism, your complete dismissal of my humanity. You never learned my name to you. I was just the janitor. But every slight, every dismissive comment, every moment where you treated me as invisible only strengthened my resolve to see justice done. As Sterling was led away, he turned back to Marcus with a mixture of defeat and desperate curiosity. How did you know? How did you know where to look? Marcus smiled, not a cruel smile but one filled with professional satisfaction. Because I've been doing this for 20 years, Mr. Sterling. I know how arrogant criminals think. I knew that if I could make myself invisible to you, if I could become someone you looked down on so completely that you forgot I was there, you would eventually reveal everything. The elevator doors closed on Sterling and Marcus was left alone with his team. Agent Chen shook her head in amazement. 3 months of that, she said. I don't know how you did it, sir. The disrespect, the treatment you endured, it was necessary, Marcus replied. And honestly, it taught me something important about how invisibility can be a form of power. Sterling never saw me as a threat because he never saw me as an equal. His prejudice became our greatest asset. But Marcus wasn't finished yet. Over the next hour, as FBI teams across the country executed arrest warrants, he received update after update. The scope of the conspiracy was even larger than they had initially believed. The money laundering operation had been funding terrorist organizations, drug cartels, and human trafficking rings across 3 continents. By dawn, 48 people were in federal custody, including some of the most powerful names in American finance and politics. The news broke simultaneously across all major networks. Massive financial conspiracy exposed by FBI directors' undercover operation. But there was one more revelation that would make the story truly unforgettable. As Marcus finally changed out of his janitor's uniform and back into his FBI suit, Agent Chen approached him with a concerned expression. Director, there's something else. We found additional evidence in Sterling's personal files, something that makes this case even more significant. She handed him a folder marked Project Phoenix Domestic Operations. Marcus opened it and felt his blood run cold. The documents detailed plans that went beyond money laundering. Sterling and his co-conspirators had been planning to manipulate the upcoming presidential election through illegal campaign contributions and voter suppression tactics specifically targeting minority communities. They weren't just stealing money, Marcus said quietly. They were trying to steal democracy itself. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The reason Sterling had been so careless with his security, so arrogant in his treatment of Marcus, was that he believed he was untouchable. He believed that money and privilege would always protect him from consequences. That people like Marcus, black, blue-collar, invisible, could never pose a threat to his power. But Sterling had made a fatal error in judgment. He had underestimated not just Marcus Thompson, the individual, but everything Marcus represented, the intelligence, determination, and integrity of people who had been overlooked and underestimated their entire lives. 6 months later, as Marcus testified before Congress about the conspiracy, he reflected on the lessons of the case. The operation had succeeded not just because of FBI resources and technology, but because of something simpler and more powerful, the willingness of a man to endure prejudice and disrespect in service of justice. But perhaps most importantly, the case had sent a message that would resonate far beyond the financial world. It demonstrated that assumptions about race, class, and intelligence could be not just morally wrong, but strategically dangerous. Sterling and his co-conspirators had been brought down by their own prejudice, by their inability to see past the surface to recognize the intelligence and capability of someone they considered beneath them. When Sterling was finally sentenced to 30 years in federal prison, he was asked by a reporter if he had any regrets about his treatment of the FBI director during the investigation. Sterling's response was telling, "I still can't believe it. He was just a janitor. How was I supposed to know?" But Marcus Thompson had the final word. At the press conference announcing the conclusion of the case, he spoke directly to that question. Mr. Sterling's comment perfectly illustrates why this operation succeeded. He and his co-conspirators lived in a world where they believed that intelligence, capability, and threat could be determined by someone's race, their uniform, or their job title. They believed that a black man in a janitor's uniform couldn't possibly be smart enough to understand their crimes, let alone stop them. He paused, looking directly into the camera. But intelligence doesn't have a color. Justice doesn't have a uniform. And sometimes, the person you underestimate the most is the one who has the power to change everything. The case became legendary within the FBI, taught at training academies as an example of how prejudice and assumptions could be weaponized against criminals. But for Marcus Thompson, it represented something deeper. Proof that visibility isn't always power, and that sometimes the most effective way to fight injustice is to let your opponent's prejudices blind them to your capability. Years later, when asked about the most important moment of the investigation, Marcus always gave the same answer. It wasn't when I uncovered the evidence, or when Sterling was arrested, or even when he was sentenced. It was when he told me I wasn't paid to be smart. In that moment, I knew I had him. Because anyone who could look at another human being and make that assumption based on their race and their uniform had already lost the ability to see clearly. And when you can't see clearly, you can't protect yourself from what's coming. The Goldman financial case became more than just a successful investigation. It became a reminder that justice often comes from unexpected places, delivered by unexpected people, and that the greatest weapon against prejudice is often the intelligence and determination of those who have been underestimated. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person cleaning your office might be the one person in the world with the power to bring your entire world crashing down. Marcus Thompson returned to his regular duties as FBI director, but the janitor's uniform hung in his office as a reminder of one of the most important lessons of his career. Never underestimate anyone, because you never know who might be watching, who might be listening, and who might have the power to hold you accountable for your action. The investigation had lasted 3 months. The trial took 8 months. But the impact of Sterling's 5 words, "You're not paid to be smart," would last a lifetime, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangerous intersection of privilege, prejudice, and assumption. In the end, Marcus Thompson had proven that intelligence, justice, and power come in all colors, all uniforms, and all job descriptions. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one you never thought to look at twice.